Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vikreditam brajavadhubhiridam cha Vishno. Sradhan vito nushrinayad atavarnayedya. Bhaktim param bhagavati pratilabhya kamam. Haridrogamasvapahitno yachirena dhira. Vikreditam brajavadhubhiridam cha Vishno. Sradhan vito nusrinuyad atavarnayedya. Bhaktin param bhagavati pratilabhya kamam. Haridrogam asvapahinotyacharin sharit. Haridrogam asvapahinotyacharin dhira. Vikreditam brajavadhubhiridam cha Vishno. Sradhan vito nushrinayad atavarnayedya. Bhaktim param bhagavati pratilabhya kamam. Hridrogam asvapahinotyacharin dhira. Vikreditam, the sporting. Brajavadhubhi, with the young women of Vrindavan. Idam, this, cha, and Vishnu, by Lord Vishnu. Shraddha Anbita, faithfully. Anushrinayat, hears. Atta, or. Varnayet, describes. Ya, who. Bhaktim, devotional service. Param, transcendental. Bhagavati, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pratilabhya, obtaining. Kamam, material lust. Hrit, in the heart. Rogam, the disease. Ashu, quickly. Apahinoti, he drives away. Achirena, without delay. dhira, sober. Anyone who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Thus he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart. Purport. The extraordinary power of Lord Krishna's conjugal pastimes is clearly revealed here. Qualitatively, the Lord's spiritual loving pastimes are the diametric opposite of material lusty affairs. So much so that simply hearing about the Lord's pastimes, a devotee conquers sex desire. By reading pornographic literature or hearing about material romance, we certainly do not conquer sex desire, but rather increase our lust. But hearing or reading about the Lord's conjugal affairs has exactly the opposite effect, because they are of the opposite nature, being purely spiritual. Therefore, it is by the causeless mercy of Lord Krishna that he exhibits his rasa lila within this world. If we become attached to this narration, we will experience the bliss of spiritual love and thus reject the perverted reflection of that love, which is called lust. As nicely put by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, param dristva nivartate. Once having directly experienced the Supreme, one will not return to material pleasures. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 33rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Ras Dance. One who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Thus he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart. Shukadeva Goswami concludes his narration of the Rasa Lila with this particular verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 33. Text number 39. As has been explained, Shukadeva Goswami was considered by the greatest, most self-realized souls throughout the world as the most appropriate person to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam. Gathered on the bank of the river Ganga in a place that is today called Shukatal. Great sages, scholars, yogis, realized souls, one of many of the greatest throughout history, Vyasadeva, Narada, Parasara, Vishwamitra, Vasishta, Bhardraj, Gautam, people who have spoke Puranas, who have spoke Upanishads in ancient times, they all came for this event. Parikshit Maharaj, the grandson of Arjuna, who was rescued by Krishna within the womb of his mother, was cursed to die in 7 days. Instead of retaliating, instead of being bitter, he took it as the greatest blessing of his life, that he was given the information he would die in 7 days, which means he had the opportunity to dedicate every moment of those last 7 days to prepare for his final journey. He left everything behind, his wealth, his material relationships, even eating and sleeping. He didn't want to waste a moment, because he knew that where he was going, he couldn't take anything with him. So rather than hold on to what we're going to inevitably lose, he wanted to completely immerse himself in holding on to what he aspired to receive for the future. He was willing to let go of all the things of this world that we become so dependent upon, so attached to, so that he could fix his mind on what was his eternal nature, the destination that would bring him into the eternal loving service of the Lord. Because of his very high aspirations, his incredible sacrifice, and just being who he was, the emperor, the greatest personality spiritually in the universe came to be with him. They weren't coming just because he was a king. Because the people who came there, the greatest kings through history would bow down to them. They came because they saw how serious he was, and they wanted to be there to help him. Now, when hundreds and hundreds of such great personalities are in one place, they didn't want to have one of those types of symposiums where everyone gets 5 minutes to speak. And there's a time collector saying, "You're over time," which is usually what happens when many people get together like this. They weren't concerned with, this was very significant. They weren't concerned with having their time to speak. Because to hear is every bit as fulfilling as to speak when we realize the truth that we're not the doer. Krishna tells in Gita that this ahankar, this ego, we think I am the doer. I am speaking. I am the proprietor. I am the controller. Things are under my control. For a devotee of the Lord, we understand Krishna as the controller. The ego thinks I am speaking. A devotee feels I'm just an instrument repeating the words of Krishna. This was Srila Prabhupada's very strong teaching and his example to us. He would regularly say, my only qualification, I'm simply repeating the words of my Guru Maharaj in Parampara. This is the spirit. Krishna's Jagat Guru. He's the supreme, unlimited spiritual master of everyone. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adakavaye. At the very beginning of the creation of this universe, he spoke to Brahma. And this knowledge, this wisdom has been passed down through the millenniums, through the yugas. So whether Krishna's message in its pure form is coming through our mouth, in which case we become enlightened just hearing it, what to speak of sharing it, or whether it's coming through somebody else's mouth, we are thrilled because it's Krishna's message. We could be an instrument of speaking, we could be an instrument of hearing. So here's Vyasadeva, the father of Shukadeva, who's the one who taught him whatever he knew. And also Narada Muni was present when Vyasadeva was in complete bewilderment, sitting on the bank of the Saraswati River in Badrikashram. He had already compiled 4 Vedas, Upanishad, Itihastas, Mahabharata, so many scriptures, Upanishads. But he felt an emptiness, a voidness in his heart. Something was missing. That was his compassion. Most people who had achieved so much would feel, just see what I have done. But Vyasadeva was saying, what if I haven't done what I'm supposed to do? And it was at that time Narada Muni came and instructed him in the Srimad Bhagawatam. Told him, write this about pure unalloyed devotional service and reveal Krishna's leelas in this world. Narada Muni was there. And they were all sitting on attentively hearing Shukadeva Goswami speak to Parikshit. And interestingly, most of these people, we read about them. They're in Ram Leela, they're in Treta Yuga, they're in Satya Yuga. Yes, Narada Muni was instructing Dhruva in Satya Yuga. Now it's the end of Dwapara Yuga, almost the beginning of Kali Yuga. Actually, it was just the Kali Yuga had just begun. Krishna had just left. And Sukadeva was only 16 years old. Can you imagine? A 16-year-old boy in the presence of the greatest rishis who are literally timeless, millions of years. They've been instructing and realizing Prahlad and Dhruva and so many saints. Because this message is transcendental. Nasta prayeshya padreshu nityam bhagavati sevaya. Bhagavati uttama sloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By hearing this Srimad Bhagavatam on a regular basis, all the unclean things of the heart are removed. And pure love awakens. Saranbatam Sukata Krishna Punja Sravana Kirtana. That just by hearing this transcendental subject, all the unclean things of the heart become cleaned. We develop a real taste for hearing. And when we develop that taste for hearing, we become pure. Because it's a pure subject. Krishna's transcendental. And the sound vibration of Krishna's names and the descriptions of Krishna's pastimes and Krishna's teachings are none different than Krishna. Srila Prabhupada explains that if you put iron rod in fire, it becomes red and hot like fire. What we associate with, we become affected by. Because this sound vibration is spiritually pure, we become spiritually purified just by hearing it. But the Bhagavatam also says, Shushushroshadadanasya Vasudeva Kataruji Sanmahat Sevaya Vipra Pundya Tirtana Sevana. That in order to actually develop this taste for hearing about Krishna, wherein we become purified in this way, we have to have the right consciousness. And that comes through serving great souls. Or as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained, Gopi Bharatur Padakamalaya Das Das Anudas, being the servant of the servant of the servant. In this particular verse, Shukadev Goswami is saying anyone who faithfully hears or describes these pastimes becomes freed from the material disease of selfish desires. First of all, it's very interesting how he calls the desire for material enjoyment a disease of the heart. And how the vast majority of human population in the world today is simply motivated by this disease in the heart. Even in the name of spirituality and religion. Infatuating, increasing the disease in the heart. Actual dharma or spiritual life is meant for the purpose of curing the disease of the heart. Freeing ourselves from the ego. Freeing ourselves from the selfish desire to be the enjoyer. On a subtle level, profit, adoration, distinction, or on the gross level of just physical and mental enjoyments. And actually experiencing the higher taste, param dristvani vartate. And that higher taste is in reconnecting with Krishna. And on the path of bhakti, this reconnection is especially established through sravanam kirtanam, through hearing and chanting, in satsang, in the association of people who have faith. Srila Prabhupada told us every morning discuss this Srimad Bhagavatam. And in many places every evening Bhagavad Gita. Because this regular hearing is so very, very important. And before today's class there was a report about Srila Prabhupada's books being distributed. This is Harikatha. giving people the opportunity to associate with Srila Prabhupada and all the great acharyas that he is representing. And if people read any way that they connect with this, with Krishna, they become purified. But when we learn, through the association of devotees, how to actually proceed on the path of hearing and chanting, then we develop real faith. So to have faith in Krishna is not a cheap thing. It's something so profound and deep. Adosha tata sadhu sangota bhajanakriya. Bhakti is, Sanatana Dharma is a matter of cultivating faith. Faith in divine truth. At the very beginning, there's a little faith. And that little faith is so powerful that it attracts Krishna, who is within our heart. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridesha arjunatishthati. To actually direct us to the association of saintly people. Adosha tata sadhu sangha. And in that association, our faith becomes even deeper. That little seed of faith is nourished. And when we have enough faith, we decide to actually dedicate ourselves to the goal of loving Krishna. And we begin spiritual practice, or sadhana. Bhajana kriya. We chant the holy names of the Lord. We regularly hear in satsang. We read these books. We begin to practice the proper method of prayer, puja, seva. And when we read Srimad Bhagavatam and these other great scriptures, we learn how to pray and what to pray for. Because so many people of so many religions pray, but Mahajano yena gatasa panta, the real path of perfection is in following the footsteps of great souls. What do they pray for? Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Srimad Bhagavatam, whether it's Prahlad or Dhruva or the Pandavas or Parikshit, or whether it's the Prachetas or Ambarish Maharaj or Kolavecha Sridhar or Murari Gupta or Vasudev Dutt. What are they all praying for? They're praying, Lord, let me serve you. Let me please you. Recently, I was speaking from the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Ranti Dev. Do you all know the story? He and his whole family fasted for 40 days to purify themselves. And they were in a lonely forest where there was nothing and no one around. And after that 40 days, they were going to break their fast. Just in time to survive. And somebody brought a big amount of prasad for the whole family. just then a Brahmin came and said, "Oh, Ranti, I am very hungry. Give me food." Ranti fed him to his full satisfaction. Meanwhile, the whole family was waiting. Then they sat down to honor their prasad to eat. And a simple person came. He was not of a higher place in society. He was just a simple person. And he said, "Ranti, I'm very hungry." So Ranti Dev fed his whole family and fed him. And he was alone, still hungry, limbs trembling with starvation. Then he was just about to eat, and another man came with a pack of dogs and said, "I'm very hungry and all my dogs are hungry." Ranti Dev fed all the rest of the food to that person, and all is fed to their full satisfaction all the dogs. Dogs could get hungry. And they ate it all. There was nothing left for him. And he's in the middle of nowhere. And there's no other food. All there was left was one cup of water, which could have sustained him. He was about to drink the water, and a chandala, a person who is considered very, very lowly and sinful and by society, approached and said, "I'm so thirsty, give me water." And Ranti Dev offered a prayer. What was his prayer? He said, "O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I do not pray for liberation. I do not pray for mystical cities or yogic powers. I do not pray for wealth or affluence. I only have one prayer. Let me take birth again and again in this world. And in every birth I take, allow me to suffer so that I could relieve other people of suffering." That was his prayer. And then he prayed to Krishna, "In giving this chandala my water," which means his life, "I will forever be free from hunger, thirst, lamentation, moroseness, or anxiety." And then he gave the water to the chandala. And suddenly, all those people who had come begging from him, they all returned and manifest forms of demigods. One was Brahma, one was Shiva. And they said, "Ranti, we just wanted to show the world what a devotee is. We'll give you any benediction you like now. We'll give you any benediction." Even then, he didn't ask for any benedictions. He said, "I don't desire anything. I only want to serve the Lord and always remember the Lord." He just wanted to be, and the greatest service we could do for the Lord in this world is to show compassion to Krishna's children, who happens to be every living being. Vasudev Dutt, he prayed that same spirit, as did Prahlad. So these are the preliminary chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam. To actually have faith, when we listen to the Rasa Lila, we have to develop the faith that we develop through the first 9 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. Do we have that faith like Ranti Dev? Like Prahlad? Like Dhruva, who was offered all benedictions by Kuvera, the treasurer of the Devas, and he only wanted to remember the Lord. In the association of people with faith, we develop faith. And then we actually can, that faith opens the doors to our hearts so that this narration can transform us. I sometimes tell the story where once I was giving a lecture and along with me speaking was a PhD professor. And afterward, he said he got his PhD in the Gita Govinda of Jayadev Goswami. And he wrote many books, this person. He said, I'm asking you, I know the stories. I know the 10th canto of Bhagavatam by memory. I know Jayadev Goswami's, I'm authority, I've written books, I have PhD. Why, of all the forms of God, why Krishna? You know, he's enjoying with ladies in bushes. He heard all these things. Actually, if he wanted to this person, if he were to sit on this dais today and just speak on the science and interconnections of ras from the point of view of the different manifestations of the ecstasies of ras and bhakti, he would mesmerize everyone. Oh, how he could speak Vrindavan Leela and the different, this is Sneha and this is Bhava and this is Mahabhav. He knows these things thoroughly. He's a professor on the subject. But he didn't have faith. Instead of becoming purified by studying all these things, he became bewildered. So he challenged me with great conviction. And I told him, you got PhD in Gita Govinda. But Gita Govinda is the postgraduate study of Dharma. I said, have you studied Bhagavad Gita? Dehinosmin yatha dehe kamala. You're not your body. You're an eternal soul. And that same little Krishna who was in the bushes that you're talking about, he spoke the Gita. He explained who we are. He also manifested his Virat Rupa, his universal form. If you can manifest a universal form, then you can play with gopis too. He manifested that universal form. And also, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he manifested his form of Matsya and Varaha. And what did they do? Can we do that? Lift the earth And Narasimhadev effortlessly liberate Hiranyakashipu, who even the Devas were afraid of. And then little Krishna, he showed the entire universe within his mouth when he was an infant child. Putana, when he was just a couple days old, he liberated. And when he was 7 years old, he lifted the Govardhan Hill for 7 days and 7 nights. Yes? Govardhan Hill is, today it's 21 kilometers around. In those days, it was 5,000 years ago, it was far bigger, many times bigger. And then when he was 8 years old, he danced with gopis. And the greatest acharyas, like Shukadev Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, such a great sannyasi, and so many others who had deepest profound knowledge, highest character, who renounced all material enjoyments and were in the ecstasy of love. They are speaking about the purity of Krishna's beautiful pastimes with the gopis. The professor, he said, he looked at his wife because she was listening. And then he turned to me and said, "We're late for breakfast." Because it was a morning program. So I said, "All right, Aaron." So it is very important that we hear with faith. Srila Prabhupada writes that we gain faith by hearing in the association of devotees. We understand these transcendental subject matters. If we actually understand who is Krishna properly, and then we hear these wonderful pastimes in that spirit of seva, of service, because sravanam, or hearing, is a service. We're hearing in order to please Krishna. Because by purifying our hearts, we love Krishna. And the greatest service to Krishna that pleases him is to serve with love. Krishna is the cause of everything. We are little parts of Krishna. Does anything please us more than when someone loves us and expresses that love in a proper way? When somebody we really love passes away from this world, how much it hurts our heart. Why does it hurt our heart? So many people are dying every day. Yes? I don't know statistics, but how many humans die every day on this planet? And how many living entities die every day on this planet? But we're not so affected. But when someone who loves us dies, or someone we love dies, it's very devastating, that separation. So this indicates something very obvious, that actually what pleases us is love. when we become attached to things of this world, it's just a distraction. And what is it we love? Who is it we love? The scriptures teach us that because every living being is part of Krishna, we love that part of Krishna ultimately. And the body is the medium by which we are having a relationship with the soul. In a previous chapter of the 10th canto, Parikshit Maharaj asked a simple question. But it was profound. He asked Sukadeva Goswami, how is it possible that the gopis of Vrindavan, the older gopis, they loved Krishna more than their own children? Because you see, when Lord Brahma, when he stole all the gopas and the calves, Krishna manifested himself as all the gopas and all the calves, identical. And except a few days before a year passed, the only person who detected anything different was Balaram, which is quite amazing. The amazing thing is he didn't detect it for almost a year. He's Balaram. When Krishna